there! Bob Oregon's Constant Gardener. Welcome to the OCGFAM show to you, my YouTube buddies. What's going on? Let me know in the comments. We'll talk about the show right now. Let's just get into the show. We're going to have a short intro because we got a long clip, but it's a good one. It's talking about alkalinity, pH, all the basics up to kind of the advanced fundamentals of growing with nectar for the gods. And talks about how you get started with it to how you may do it in a more advanced thing. As far as using your meters, flushing, it's a big clip. There's a lot here, but it could have been 10 clips, but I made it into one. See, I said it was going to be short, now it's long. Watch this clip. I think you're really going to enjoy it if you grow with nectar for the gods.
Christy Trejo, Low 4M. Hey there, Bob. It is one of your YouTube buddies, Mr. Vinegar Bee Soda here, rocking the nectar sample pack, using the test strips for pH. My baby Charlene is just loving it. I do not have a way to test for alkalinity or ppm. Should the preventative Herc flush be my go-to since I am flying fairly bat-like blind here? Appreciate everything y'all do. We love you, and we'll see you tomorrow. So, you've decided to
watch our show too many times.
Yes.
You're picking up Bobisms.
The big kahuna.
Now you just go into the bathroom, look in the mirror, and say, No!
No!
Stop!
If you, for whatever reason, are not going to dig in on alkalinity and ppm, which are probably not, those are the minor issues as opposed to pH and getting your watering right and those
pH
sorts of
is
things.
first key, and then ppms would be your second meter to buy. They reached out with this email as well, and the question was, what's more important to have right now, a ppm meter or an alkalinity meter? And it's like, honestly, the hard part about the alkalinity, it's a great little tool. You'll use it 4 times. Nothing's going to change for the next year. So now you've got a $80 meter that only tests the one thing.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of people, if you went down to a pool store or go into
those
Walmart for the little strips.
Yeah, I've got those. I've got a hot tub now.
Yeah, hot tub one.
And it's got alkalinity as one of the things on there.
Yeah, and it'll just give you a reference. Yeah. It's not going to be accurate, but it's going to give you a
ballpark,
low, medium, high.
Okay. Do I have a problem?
Exactly. Or basically, too, if your water source is a high pH, generally, if you got high pH water and there's white film on your glass or your shower doors, then you've got high alkalinity.
Sure.
It's just where the calcium carbon is coming from. So knowing that number specifically, although it's a nice reference to kind of go off of, it's not your driving force, because if we know what your pH in your soil is doing, we know what your water source pH is to start with, we know how we can combat what potentially is going to happen because of your water. By the time we get into bloom, we know that we can either add in some calcium carbonate to build in the alkalinity, or we can start feeding more acidically to try to break down the excess alkalinity that some of these people have in their water sources. So
the alkalinity is significant in how it affects the pH, not in and of itself, in the big picture of simplifying the equation.
Yeah, the nice thing about alkalinity is if it's where it's supposed to be, it literally is a throttle for the whole nutrient regimen.
So it's a way to make a real difference.
Yeah, and if you don't have any alkalinity and your soil's always drifting down to the pH and you have no alkalinity in the soil, you're always fighting trying to get the nutrition into the plant because everything's off balance because there's no alkalinity. But building that in with calcium carbonate, whether you build a charger like OCG has built out those CO2 chargers that Pig taught us how to build, CO2 reactors, or just knowing my water is garbage or my water is RO or my water is distilled, knowing that, I know it's stripping the alkalinity out of my potting soil all the time. So now that I'm aware of this situation, by the time I go into bloom, I'll make sure to add in calcium carbonate right before I go into bloom, so when the plant triggers over, pH is corrected, it starts to kind of raise back up, and it has this stockpile of alkalinity in the carbonate that will be continuously broken down through the RO distilled or garbage water, and that will convert all of that into pure alkalinity. And so you can create your own alkalinity. If your water source doesn't have it naturally, you can make it in the soil just by adding limestone in.
Is alkalinity and dealing with that ever a opportunity if it's not a problem? I mean, it's either a problem or it's not. But if it's not a problem, can it be an opportunity, or is this always something where I'm just either fixing my water or not?
Yeah, the problem with that is a lot of people wanted to run out and buy Chimera because it's a
they
bloom
think,
enhancer,
oh shit.
and it's like, no, it's actually a pH adjuster for bad water or bad soil situations. So if you have no problems and things are fine, your pH in your soil 6.6 every time you do it.
Nothing to be mind here.
Yeah, don't worry about what's happening. Your alkalinity is not an issue. It's now how to feed them more aggressively.
Sure.
But if your pH is always dumping on you, then you have an alkalinity issue. You don't have enough. If your pH is always climbing in flower in the soil, that means your water is too alkaline, and we got to figure out how to react that or reduce the alkalinity in the water so that it doesn't deposit so much of the carbonate in the soil, which then affects the pH that will ultimately go up. So I guess back to the question is
well, alkalinity
is a Herc flush.
Well, alkalinity you're going to see because it's going to start falling away from you as you get
either high or low. I mean, if your plant starts to discolor and you check your slurry and your pH is way too high, you have too much alkalinity in your regular water, so we got to figure out how to react that. Or if it's way too low, your water is stealing it from the soil and making your pH low.
Okay.
The question is, since I don't have those meters to take a slurry test, he's got our test. I mean, he's got our litmus, so he knows that it's mid-6s, things are fine, but I don't know the parts per million. Do I still use a Herculean flush in the days if I don't know? And it's to kind of clarify that, and our feed, flush, feed, tea, that whole method really it's a preventative flush, meaning you don't have any problems. Yeah. There's no real issues. It's just instead of going feed, tea, feed, water,
let's reset.
Feed, tea. It's just saying feed. We're going to kind of clean up what's left over and get rid of the excess with the preventative flush. 10 to 15 mils per gallon is ample. Then go right back to feed. But that little flush day isn't a corrective. It's not. It's just to kind of reset that root zone so we keep the balance of leftover nutrition, leftover salts, leftovers kind of being pushed down below the root zone so that the plants can then accept the next 2 rounds of feeding.
So we can keep pushing and nutriting in the way we want to without building up something that we don't see coming.
Yeah.
But if you could get a ppm on there, it would be nice, but if you don't, you certainly should be following a feed, flush situation.
It doesn't hurt at all.
Yeah.
And then now if you get to a feed, and you're looking at your plants and they're just noticeably hungry, because I've got a lot of these guys with LEDs where they're 2 times feeding some of these different recipes and just barely keeping that 300 parts per million in the soil. Those guys don't really have that luxury of doing a feed, flush, because if you do the flush at 300, now you're at 200.
Yeah.
And the plants are now not being able to access any of the reserves in the soil. So you really don't want to keep doing the preventative flushes if your plants are yellowing or there's discoloration or there's something wrong. That's when knowing your ppms isn't a good idea, because you'll get a sense of, am I overfed? Am I underfed? And a lot of times too, pH is driving that number. So if your plants are discolored and your pH is 5.5, we figured it out. If your plants are discolored and your pH in your soil is 7.4, we figured it out. We just have to adjust our pH in our feeds until we get that soil pH corrected.
If I've got some Holy Diver Jesus LEDs, though, and I'm tripling up on my feed, I probably have a ppm meter.
Oh, I would hope so.
So that,
the money on the lighting than buy the meter.
But if you're just trying to grow 4 in the backyard, then
or 2 in the
flush,
closet. Most likely you probably don't have the 4x8 LED panel that's running at 68% on a VPD of 92.
Your meter needs new bearings in it down the yard.
So
okay. So for anyone serious about it, you have that, and anyone just kind of trying to get started with this, just flush.
And, if I have to choose on the meters too, I recommend not going cheap on pH meters.
Sure.
Because a cheap pH meter is garbage.
Yeah.
And
unreliable, breaks. It's cheaper to buy a nice one.
It's better to have 4 pieces of litmus paper. Measuring that way.
But the mechanism of a ppm meter is a much simpler.
It's literally it's electromagnetism. It's literally reading the electro waves in the soil from hydrated salts. So it's literally it's how it's reacting. It sends energy through it. Whatever it picks up on the other end, there's your price from value.
And this is 2 pieces of metal, not this weird glass ball that's got to be
You don't
perfectly...
need to keep it hydrated.
Yeah.
You don't. I just rinse it.
Yeah.
But you don't. You can buy this $50 one of those and be
Sure.
And really, again, now here's where it hurts all of us because we use like 8 meters over there, pH meters, just to quality control our stuff.
Yeah.
All 8 meters read differently.
Yeah.
In the same damn solution. So it's learning your meter, learning how your plants look to the meter readings, and then using your meter as basically a reference. It's a start point. You may be 6.7 to 7.1 is your optimal. Where that same, if you brought that solution to me, it may be 6.4 to 6.7.
Okay, what do you think of that? Informative, entertaining, helpful, agree, disagree? Questions or comments? I feel like this might bring up a lot of questions, a lot of comments, ripe for discussion. So please hit us up in the comments. I love you. I'll see you tomorrow. The OCG Fam Show. It's pretty good. It happens every day. It's the OCG Fam Show. See you tomorrow.